The whole church year, we're given one Sunday to talk about the greatest king in the history of Israel, King David. One Sunday, one story. And the story that we get about David is not about David the musician. How they say there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. His harp playing. How it could still the most distressed soul. That's not the story that we get about David. It's not about David's courage or bravery. How even when he was just a boy and all the other men of Israel were cowering in front of the Philistine giant, David stepped forward without any armor. The Lord protected me from the paw of the lion. The Lord protected me from the paw of the bear. The Lord will protect me from this giant. And David took his slingshot and tossed it in the air, and it got Goliath right here. And David stepped forward and picked up Goliath's sword. That's not the story we get. It's not a story about what a friend David was. The best friend a guy could have. It's not a story about David's bond with Jonathan, how David put his friends before himself. That's not the story we get. It's not a story about how at the end of the day, after David was playing music, done playing music, or done battling, or done presiding over the boardroom, how he would loosen his necktie and dance with all his might before God. The life of the party, the greatest dancer, David. Those aren't any of the stories that we have to tell about David on the one Sunday this year. They're good stories, but the one story that we have to hold together today is a story about the most awful thing David ever did. Things had been going so well in his kingdom. He was comfortable. At the beginning, he was busy. He was a king who was deeply involved with everything that was going on. He knew about all the decisions that were made. He would go into battle with his men. But things have been going so well that is no longer necessary. And this is a great relief to all the people. They feel like they have arrived. Their king hardly needs to work anymore. He just lays around all day in his bathrobe. Did you hear at the beginning of the scripture when all the king and their men go out to battle? That's how it starts. But David isn't with the men anymore because he doesn't need to be with the men anymore. Things have changed. David used to have calluses all over his hands, but now he just has golden rings on his fingers. He used to be able to hit a bird with his slingshot from 50 yards away, but he doesn't know where that slingshot is anymore. David used to climb trees and pull himself up and lie in wait in the middle of battle. It's not even clear if David could do a pull-up anymore. He's gotten soft around the middle. Every night he stays up very late, and he sleeps in even later the next morning. And that's where the story begins today. David rolls off that nice leather couch in his palace. It's 2 or 3 in the afternoon. He doesn't know why he slept there. He's got a headache. That's kind of normal. He stands up. Maybe a little espresso and sunshine will help. So he snaps his fingers. The drink is delivered. He walks upstairs to the roof of his palace, hoping for a bit of sunshine, a bit of caffeine. He takes a sip of caffeine, and he can feel it coursing through his veins. That helps, but it's not the thing that gets him going. He can feel the sun on his skin, but that's not the thing that gets him going. David has been looking out with his binoculars all over the kingdom recently. It's all mine, he thinks to himself. And everybody basically agrees. Look at this kingdom. Look at our king. Look how well we are doing. So David looks and looks and looks and looks through his binoculars All of Israel is like a great menu in front of him. What will it be today, King David? And through those binoculars, there is a beautiful woman in the bathtub. And David picks her. He picks her not because he loves her. He picks her not because she is the most beautiful woman in the world. He just picks her because he can. Because all of it is his. Because he's looking at a great big menu and there are no prices and he has no limits upon him. This is the life of a king. If you see something, if you want it, you can have it. No limits. It's kind of a fun way to live. Should I tell you about it? Holly has a pretty good job. We're almost a dual income family. Almost a dual income family. We've now paid off all our college loans. We do still have to be careful with our finances, though. We have one car, and I think our 2 bicycles are worth more money than our one car. But when I go to the Goodwill, I am a king. Because at the Goodwill, I can get whatever I want. If I see something that just vaguely sparks my interest, I get it. And then I bring it home, and I look and wonder, how many wool V-neck sweaters from the Banana Republic does a person need? How many Tonka trunks does a kid need? I see junk piled on top of junk from the Goodwill, and I think to myself, why have I done this? I have sinned against the Lord. No more V-neck sweaters from the Goodwill. No more Tonka trucks. David had done what he does with Bathsheba, with other women before, but he'd gotten away with it. This is what kings did or do. It's reprehensible, of course. Who knows what this experience was like for Bathsheba? Whether there was willingness, desire, nervousness, trepidation, mutual affection, sadness, we don't know. The vocabulary and time is so different around relationships and intimacy, we don't know. But we know it was reprehensible. But we should be careful, because David was also a great man. And we should be careful in thinking how we ourselves might behave if we were in a different position. If we were kings or queens, if we had no limits upon us, if we could do anything. That could be hard. I know that because I go to the Goodwill. Maybe you go to the Goodwill or the Galleria. Maybe you know what it's like to have no limits upon yourself. It's dangerous. One of my classmates at the University of Chicago Divinity School was just a part-time student. During the day, she worked in downtown Chicago in private equity. I don't know what private equity is, but I know what it means. I was sitting next to Ellen one day in class, and I was looking on her computer screen, and she should have been taking notes, but she wasn't taking notes. She was shopping for pens, and not just any ordinary pen. There was a break in the class, and I leaned over and I said, Ellen, why on earth are you shopping for $600 pens? And she said, I don't know. It's the worst thing I've fallen into. I'm doing it because I can, I guess. Another one of Ellen's favorite hobbies was to have a helicopter bring her to the top of a mountain. And then she'd put on her skis and zip down the mountain. And then the helicopter would pick her up, bring her back to the mountain, and she'd do it all over again. So David thought this little tryst with Bathsheba could have been forgotten. Maybe like my friend Ellen thought all those pens in the left-hand side of her drawer at home that her nieces and nephews probably dug out and mangled every time. She probably forgot about the thousands of dollars that she was spending on pens. It didn't matter. She could do it. She could afford it. Not a big deal. But something different happens in our story today with Bathsheba. David, I'm pregnant. And for the first time in a couple of years, David has to sit up straight and do some thinking. Because he's been king and it's been going well and he hasn't had to do a thing lately. And this sounds like bad news, but sometimes it's kind of fun to be challenged. And finally, David has been challenged and he's a problem solver, so he is going to solve this problem. Easy, he thinks. I will call Bathsheba's husband, Uriah. I'll call him back from battle. Give him a little sabbatical. I'll send my driver to their home. Treat them to the finest meal at the finest restaurant in Jerusalem. Wine, a meal. The driver will deliver them home together at the end of the night. Later this year, there will be a baby in their home. And the king of Israel will send his congratulations to Bathsheba and Uriah. But Uriah is too noble for this. His comrades are at war. They are eating military rations, sleeping in tents. He refuses the comforts of the city, the comforts of his wife. He won't go inside. Plan B, David thinks. Plan B. War is hell. Men die. People die. Uriah knows this. He signed up for this. He would sacrifice his life for this country. So that is what he will do. He will die. Crisis will be averted. Things will stay as they are. I'll take care of Bathsheba. Uriah, that patriot, he would have understood. So that's what David does. Uriah is killed, and David brings Bathsheba into his home, and she's cared for. Crisis is averted. The ends have justified the means. If David were up for re-election, he would have won in a landslide. Maybe no one even heard about this. And if they did hear about it, you just deny it. You can deny anything. So, David was a great king, a great musician, a great warrior, a great leader. That's what we can remember, right? This story will just fall away. Well, the Lord knows what happened, and Nathan knows what happened. And that's what we get this morning. That's why we're holding this story. It's a hard story. It's an awful story. It's the worst thing David has ever done. But even as we are telling this story, we cannot forget that David was also a great man. When Nathan confronts him with what has happened, and Nathan sticks his finger into David's chest and says those chilling words, "You are that man." David doesn't have Nathan tossed out of the palace or executed for speaking to a king that way. Self-comprehension returns to David. He knows that he is wrong. So he weeps and he tears his clothes and he sleeps on the ground, and he knows that even though he is the most powerful man in the world, every bad thing that is going to come his way, he deserves. We can't forget it. David was a great man, even with this story. David was a great man, a musician, a warrior, a leader. What do you wish for? Do you want to be great? I want to be great. What I desire has something in common with aspects of David's character. I wish I were stronger, braver, smarter, more desirable, healthier. I wish I could live and live and live and look out over a whole kingdom and snap my fingers and have a helicopter take me to the top of a mountain. I'm being hyperbolic, but I bet you have all wished for things too. At some point in your life, wished for things like this. Maybe wished for more things. We all wish for things. A friend of mine was telling me something about a friend of his. My friend's friend at their church, they have a great big problem. It's a bigger problem than any problem we have ever had at our church. The problem at this church is that they have too much money. On Sunday mornings, the pastor or the priest goes through the worship half-heartedly. A couple people show up. They go through it half-heartedly. And then the offering comes. And the people dump their thousands of dollars into the offering and assume that this will take care of everything. And it probably will. That church will always keep going and their building will always be well maintained. And that church will always be as empty as David's soul was that afternoon on his rooftop, peering out through those binoculars at Bathsheba's body, knowing he could have her because there were no limits, no limits, no limits, no limits. We have limits here. No pretending like this at our church. No pretending like this with us, with our bodies, our lives, our souls. We are limited people. We all are. And we're never going to forget about that. It doesn't matter how beautiful and bright and white our steeple gets. It doesn't matter if we raise more money this year for our stewardship drive, or more money the next year, or more money the year after. We are limited people. And we're never going to forget that. And we're not going to forget it, not because we revel in reminding one another of how limited we are. We don't do it just because it's fun. The saddest thing about this story, about David's unlimitedness, is the way in which his position in life precludes the grace of God from breaking in. We won't ever forget about our limitedness because it is in what we lack, how we are broken, who we are, that God actually comes to us. David wished he was smarter, and he got a tutor, so he was smarter. He wished he was a better musician, and he took lessons, and he was a better musician. He wished he was in better shape, and he got a trainer. Everything he wanted, he got. And so he forgot what it was like to receive a gift. What David didn't know, but what all of us know, is that we can snap our fingers. And God will look down at us, limited though we are, mortal that we are, dying that we are. God will look down at us and see each of you in all your limitedness, more bare than Bathsheba in that tub. Every weakness and sore spot you have, God will see you in all your limitedness. And God will love you without limitation. David was a great king, but he didn't know that. Amen.